Time now to bring you our focus report. Today we head to South Africa, where each year an estimated 3,800 babies are abandoned. With that figure on the rise, the adoption rate is in a free fall. Several obstacles are hindering the adoption process. Our correspondents Caroline Dumais, Stefan Carstens with Patrick Lovett sent us this report.
In South Africa, 10 babies are abandoned every day. Most of the time, they're found in back alleys, in garbage bags, or even in toilets. Here in Johannesburg, this local Baptist mission took a difficult decision to actually facilitate the act of abandoning a child. They set up a so-called baby bin.
So they will flip up the door like this and then place a baby here, and then, yeah, that's how we'll know that there's a baby in the bin, because we have a sensor in here.
One newborn baby arrives here every month. Infants are immediately taken under the protection of Francina and her team of surrogate mothers. They take shifts to be able to look after the dozens of abandoned newborns, day and night. But the resources needed for such an operation are huge.
The basic, the formula, we have our need list on the website actually. Danny. I used to cry when I see the baby coming in, especially when they come in like sick to the point of death. You look at the baby, you cry tears.
Newborns who arrive here sometimes have AIDS or pneumonia. Some do not survive.
There have been instances where mothers try to abort the babies and the baby doesn't abort, and when the baby's born, they try and give it poison. That's just stories that, we've come across over the years.
Nadine has been running this NGO for 6 years, and her efforts have not been in vain. Half of the orphans who come here end up being adopted. This figure could be better, but adoption is a complex process, here in particular.
In South Africa, we have cultural differences where adoption in some cultures are not accepted, but we are seeing a change where younger and younger families are starting to adopt. So the culture's changing a little bit. I still think we've got a long way to go.
Adoption is still a strong taboo among some of South Africa's communities who remain deeply attached to their traditions. One such community are the Sangomas, the traditional healers. Because they place such importance in the spiritual guidance of their ancestors, many Sangomas are quite skeptical when it comes to integrating babies born from another family. But this ritual might be the solution.
If you don't do that, then the child would grow but will have complications in his or her life. And he'd never have ancestors protecting him. Even the ancestors won't accept him in the family because they do not know him. He might be in the house, but he's not recognized and he's not known in the family. So I think it's wise if the child welfare and the government involves the Sangomas.
South Africans adopt twice as less as they did 10 years ago. Obstacles are not only cultural, they're also administrative. A common concern amongst child welfare workers is that the South African government lacks political will to tackle the problem. Meanwhile, illegal immigration also seems to be an issue.
Our Department of Social Development, our Department of Home Affairs is very suspicious of any child who's been abandoned. And there is an assumption that many of these children are foreign. And so we are struggling to get them documentation. We are struggling to get them birth certificates. What they do is they give them a handwritten birth certificate, and we can't use a handwritten birth certificate to place the children onto the registry of adoptable children and parents. And that's part of the legislative process.
South Africa's child protection activists have been pushing for every abandoned child to have the right to be adopted, because when it does happen, it works rather well. Interracial adoptions have become an increasingly common sight. Aisha has been living with her adoptive family since birth.
Aisha's very charming. So she's one of those children who she makes friends wherever you go. And when Aisha was very little, we went on holiday with her. And this amazing black man came up to my husband and said to him, "I just want to say thank you. I think what you're doing is amazing." I think for us, just that feeling of, yes, here is somebody who's really seeing that we're a family and that we love each other and that it's bigger than the fact that we look different. we actually are, we really are meant to be together as a family.
Child abandonment remains very prevalent, with an estimated 5 million orphans in the Rainbow Nation.
Today's Focus report, of course, coming to us from our team on the ground in South Africa. To talk more, Ivan Savvy is Director of Plan International in France. Thanks for your time today. For many parents, abandoning a child would seem almost unthinkable. There are, however, many people who are forced to do so. Tell us some of the reasons that people are giving up their children.
Yeah, of course, the situation of these children is terrible, but the root cause of that, you have to bear in mind that there is a lot of violence against women in South Africa and overall in the region. The prevalence of violence against women is very high. In poor communities, 1 woman out of 3 has been victim of violence in the course of the year. And quite a significant percentage includes sexual violence. So those children are the result of very difficult life for their mothers, and abandoning a child is never the choice. It's just a drama for the mothers as well. We were mentioning in the documentary the prevalence of AIDS and tuberculosis. So there is a lot of prostitution and child prostitution as well. Young girls who have children and who are prostitutes, and they have no other solution than abandoning their child. So this is really
So as you're saying, an incredibly difficult situation for a parent to make, but if they do make the decision to abandon the child, we're seeing that adoption figures in many cases are stagnating. Why is that?
Well, to get access to adoption, I mean, it's legally, from a legal perspective, it's quite a difficult process, a complex process. And the first thing to be able to be eligible to adoption is to have a birth certificate, to be existing. And it's true that here, when a child is abandoned, you cannot prove who are the parents. To get a birth certificate established, the date of birth, the names of the parents is an essential component to be able to establish the certificate. So this is why abandonment is a drama, both for the mother but also for the child that doesn't get this certificate, and then the result is he doesn't get access to his rights, including his right to adoption.
So we're seeing on one hand administrative obstacles which are standing in the way of babies being adopted or children. We saw in that report some reference made to cultural differences and people being reticent about adopting because of that reason.
Yeah, the cultural obstacles are on the adoption, but there are also, if you think about the reason why those children are abandoned, to be a mother child, to have a baby if you're not married, for example, is something that is not accepted, and also leads some women to abandon their child because they have to hide or they have to move away from their family because they are rejected if they are waiting for an illegitimate child. So we have to work with the traditional healers that was mentioned, but also we have to work to ensure that the vulnerable girls who are facing these early pregnancies or unwanted pregnancies, they can be accompanied all through the path rather than abandoning their child. But being accompanied can allow them to give birth, but also to register the child, and eventually if they decide that they are not able to keep the child with them, at least the child is registered.
So you say working on the social stigma that these young mothers face when they do fall pregnant out of wedlock, for example.
Exactly.
In addition to other cultural problems. Where are we when it comes to interracial adoption? So black families, for example, adopting white children, or the other way round that we saw in this report. Yeah. There's still some stigma around that.
Yeah, the stigma is not necessarily about the interraciality of adoption. It's really traditionally a child is received in a family where there is a husband and a wife. So, I mean, all of the consequences of unwanted children leads to difficulties in accepting adoption. It's really this family line that is considered the norm, and this is what has to be changed. It's not necessarily only about interracial component.
Just finally, not everyone will be able to adopt for a number of reasons. Plan International France looks a great deal at sponsoring children as well, which is equally an option. Just tell us briefly how that all happens.
Yeah, so sponsoring a child is something quite different, because the children that are sponsored through organization, they have parents, they have families, they are living in very difficult circumstances, but we accompany the child and hold the family and hold the community thanks to the support of our sponsors. So it's very different from adoption. An orphanage can also propose some kind of sponsorship to support the work of an orphanage, like the one we've seen in your documentary. But it's a way to support poor children and their families to get access to a better life.
Okay, Yvan Savy, you're the director of Plan International France. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short break. We'll have more international headlines coming up after an ad break for you. Stay tuned. You're watching Live from Paris.